What's going on, everybody? Let's tap into it. We're going to go over some top headlines for this week, and let's jump right into it. Let's get this set up for you. The first thing we're going to jump into is what happened at the Correspondence dinner. Let's see. Let's get it to where we can see what's going on here. Let's hit play. Obviously, there was a shooting that happened. This is just some footage of what it looked like before. Those are the gunshots. I don't know if you can hear them. You see mayhem begin. As you can see, people started to scatter because they heard the gunshots. But if you look closely, interesting enough, there's someone right here. It looks like he's taking the president's order, or I don't know, maybe drink, him and his wife, and they're still, as you can see, they're still kind of engaged in conversation. I'm gonna let it play, but you'll see that they're still engaged. They're not even aware of what's going on. Now they're alerted to it. Now they start ducking. So yeah, that was a big headline this week, or should I say this past week. It just goes to show, you can never let your guards down. You're not safe. Even at dinner, there's just always, something going on. I know they found the suspect, and so I heard a few shots, and I think they read a letter that he wrote, and he was actually a teacher in California, from the information that's come out. But it's one of the bigger headlines, and as you know, these type of headlines become very political, and people try to take a narrative and run with it. But at the end of the day, going after the president of the United States to cause harm to him or others that are around, it's just wrong. But it shows the world that we live in, to where people have opinions, they have feelings, and rather than processing these feelings properly, or having feelings and leaving it at that, they're seeking to harm. And unfortunately, that happened. But from my understanding, no one was hurt, so that's a good thing. So we're gonna go over to the next big topic from this week, which is, let's get this set up for you. The singer David was finally arrested and he's being charged with murder of the young lady, the 14-year-old young lady. And let's get that playing.
More than 7 months after investigators found a dismembered body inside his car, the pop singer David was in a Los Angeles court today answering to charges of murder. CBS News chief correspondent Matt Gutman has the latest.
Plea of not guilty has been entered on behalf of Mr. Burke.
Late this afternoon, the platinum-selling singer known as David in court for the first time, hours after this stunning announcement from LA's district attorney.
Today, I am announcing the charges against David Anthony Burke in connection with the brutal and horrific murder of Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time.
The charges, the harshest possible, which could bring the death penalty.
First-degree murder with special circumstances.
And just to say this, they also went through his phone and found a ton of child porn on there. That's unfortunate. Oh, I don't even know if we were supposed to say that word, but child, indecent material on his phone, and that's also very telling. But this story has a lot of mystery around it, because it's she was 14 years old, 13 when they first began seeing each other, and it's like, what was he doing with this 13-year-old young girl, 14-year-old young girl? What were her parents saying about her coming in and out of the house? And it's just unfortunate that she lost her life, and he preyed on her in this way. Well, we don't know all the evidence, but right now a lot of it is pointing to him, and people have been saying, she was found in his car. Why haven't y'all arrested him yet? But they finally arrested him, and they charged him with the harshest of charges. And hopefully justice is served, you know. It's a big deal. Let's hear what the rest they got to say.
The special circumstances being lying in wait.
Celeste Rivas was a runaway, just 13 when she left home, and prosecutors allege met with David and was in a sexual relationship with him. They say Rivas went to his home on April 23rd last year and disappeared. Burke, now 21, is charged with personally using a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument, to commit murder. You mentioned lying in wait. Do you believe that David was trying to lure Celeste?
He invited her ultimately with the idea that he was going to murder her.
You're saying it was premeditated, that he knew he was going to murder her on that day, and that you have evidence to prove that?
Yes.
Rivas's dismembered and decomposed body was discovered more than 4 months later in the trunk of a Tesla registered to the singer at a Hollywood impound yard.
Shameful. Shameful. It's just so sad. You know, 13, 14 years old going out like that. It's sad. And you know, you can always point the finger at different people, places, and things, and how things could be better. You know, we don't know enough information, but we know enough to be able to say, parents, be attentive to your children. Please, boys and girls, you know, your sons and your daughters, be attentive to them. Be mindful of what they're doing with their phone. And I'm not saying be legalistic about how you deal with them. I'm saying be attentive. Observe their behavior. See who they're hanging out with. You know, watch their patterns. And it's okay for you to be a parent. Sometimes being the parent who says no is the best thing that you can do for your children. They say she ran away, but there's other information that, you know, says the family knew she would be with him. So it's just a lot of, like I said, a lot of mystery behind it, but at the end of the day, this young lady is gone. She you know, her life and how she went out was just senseless and just unnecessary. Unnecessary. Another pain point of news from this week, though. I guess this segment of news would be, I guess, maybe a bit more entertaining for some than myself. But let's get into the Meg Thee Stallion and Klay Thompson news. Share my thoughts on it after it plays.
Megan Thee Stallion blasts Klay Thompson online after calling it quits with the NBA star over alleged cheating.
I think I've just gone through so much.
The rapper calling out Klay on her Instagram stories, writing, "Holding you down through all your horrible mood swings and treatment towards me during your basketball season. Now you don't know if you can be monogamous."
You have to be tough, but today I'm being vulnerable. I wanted to be my raw and real self and like let everybody see exactly what was really happening.
Megan now tells ET, "Trust, fidelity, and respect are non-negotiable for me in a relationship, and when those values are compromised, there's no real path forward."
At this point in my life, I've definitely learned to kill the noise and just keep going forward.
The situation seems to be weighing heavy on Meg, who was visibly emotional during her Moulin Rouge curtain call, just hours after she confirmed the breakup.
Yo, you know, I do feel bad, you know, when people are in these relationships and they don't work out, but I also don't get too engaged and I don't become too informed. But it is kind of odd to me how people are just so engaged into the affairs of celebrities. And I try to speak to it in a way that, how should I say this? It's I guess understanding, because I don't deal with like the obsession to follow these people or to find or to glean hope from them in matters like romance. But you know, from my understanding, the internet was doing its due diligence, talking about this. This is one of the trending topics from the weekend. Seems like she was, or at least they're framing it, that she was emotional at her show. But I'll get into the rest of my reaction. Let me let this finish out. Well, people love everybody until
Klay has
it
not
all
commented
matters.
on the split or Megan's cheating claims.
I know who I am. I know I'm that girl. I've been that girl, still gonna be that girl, forever gonna be that girl. So I just gotta put my mind to it to do whatever I want to do.
Okay. Cool. Well, here's the reality. You know, no one is guaranteed anything in life. You know, health is not guaranteed. Wealth is not guaranteed. Love, romantic love with a partner that lasts forever, is just not guaranteed. And, you know, one of the things, you know, I always hear, you know, from people when they get in these relationships, they talk about how a person is treating them up front. And I always see how they're just doing life from the lens of whatever they want. You know, I rarely hear, you know, people inviting God into their relationship. And I don't say this from a lack of experience. I'm saying this because I lived it. When we don't invite God into, you know, just the path of how we want to go about finding a spouse or a person, or even having the aim of marriage in mind, when we don't have God involved and when we don't have marriage in mind, we tend to just move based off the vibe, based off how we feel, based off, you know, our preferences, based off what culture approves, based off what may be appealing in the moment, but just not give longevity. And a lot of times the celebrity life is so different from the average day-to-day life that, you know, they seems to do things differently. So for one, I don't think we should be, you know, looking up to them. We shouldn't be looking up to anybody like that, just in my personal frame of thinking. But I do understand how we can want people to have, I guess, these great romantic stories. And, you know, when you're seeing someone like Meg Thee Stallion, who I guess represent a lot of women in terms of musically and how they feel, how they show up in the world, they are rooting for her. And it doesn't matter who she's with, they just want her to win. But at no point in time do I really see an intentionality to say, you know what, we're bringing God into this. And even having God in your relationship doesn't guarantee success. But if you're serious about doing things the right way, if you're serious about having a healthy relationship and the possibility of success, you would bring God in it. Some people try to say, well, if it won't work, if there's a chance that it won't work, if God is in it, then why do it at all? That's like saying, well, if I can get in an accident when I get in my car, why should I drive at all? You know, accidents do happen, you know. Issues in relationships and marriages that people have involved God in, they come about. But when you have God, he navigates you and the person through wisdom of the word, through counsel, through conviction, through the leading of the Holy Spirit, through grace and mercy towards one another. He helps you navigate love in a way that centers him around it so you can have success, rather than it centering around us and it become egotistical, it become prideful, it becomes selfish. That's why we involve God, because he designed marriage, he designed relationships. Even though a lot of times we don't want to include God in this, all of this is his design. He created the world, he created us, he created relationships, he created romance, like he created it all, so we go to him for it. And when we include him, it is us honoring him and saying, we want you involved. We don't want to do it our way. And that's, rather than jumping on Meg's side or Clay's side or talking about who cheated and who didn't cheat and what their past situation was, my perspective is, let's include God in our relationships. Let's not idolize celebrities. Let's include God in the very thing that he designed, because he gives us the best chance at success with it. All right. One last thing, and we will have concluded our recap. I thought this would be a perfect way to kind of conclude the news this week. And this is a sermon, part of a sermon from a pastor at my church. He is the lead pastor, and he is talking about the gospel. And I just want to play a little bit of that, and then we'll talk about it.
Of the gospel. But then here's where I want to ask us, as our youth so gracefully and wonderfully displayed for us, are we ashamed of the gospel? Do we feel like the gospel is a message worth sharing and worth living? Or do we feel like those in the modern period of the Enlightenment and so forth, where the message of Christ was just simply said to be privatized and kept to yourself? I don't know how you...
I wanted to share a little bit of this because, even though I shared highlights from, trending news for the week, I think it's important for us to recognize that God is still working. Preachers are still preaching. People are still believing on the gospel. It is still the good news about Jesus who came to save us. And in a world that has a lot of chaos happening, failure in relationships, as you can see, men taking advantage of young girls, and harm being caused to children, a 14-year-old losing her life, shootings happening at the president's dinner, the Correspondence dinner. So much going on. So much has happened this week. But what we see remain the same is that God's word is still being preached. The power of the gospel is still being heralded from the pulpit, heralded from those who are out there witnessing in the streets, those who are sharing the good news with their coworkers, those who are, just going out and doing God's work. Why does this matter? Because in the world where we see so much happening in a bad way, we need to be reminded of the hope that we have in Jesus. We need to be reminded that even if and when, harm is brought to our physical body, because we have Jesus, we have eternity, we have peace, we have joy. It doesn't feel good because we are going through these things here, but we have assurance. We have confidence. We can be fully persuaded that the good news of the gospel is for us, that there's grace and mercy for us when we find ourselves falling short, when we find ourselves struggling with anxiety, when we find ourselves yielding giving into temptation, when we find ourselves struggling and frustrated with the faith and the matters of life. One thing's for certain and two things for sure. The gospel is still being preached, and God is still at work. He's still at work to save us, to comfort us, to be there with us through the thick and the thin, through grieving, through sickness, through health, through celebration. God is here with us. Listen, that's our news recap for the week, and I just wanted to end it on that note. Y'all go into this week knowing that God is with you. There's hope. Don't be ashamed of the gospel, because it's good news of Jesus and the promises he has for us in this life and the life to come. As I always say, I'll see y'all in the comment section, and always know there's hope.